Good morning. In conversation with Amir Nair. Hello, Amir.
Good morning.
What was the spark behind starting a Manstra?
That's an interesting one. Thank you for asking that, Shiny. So, a couple of years back, 3 years back, I kind of came out of the corporate to work with the small and the medium-sized businesses. And the goal was that what I'd seen before in my past was there's a lot of organizations who go in for advisory and support to these small and medium-sized organizations. But reality is that they need help with execution. So the consulting organization that I formed was to create and support, get to shop floor with these owners, with these people, not just provide the technology, not just provide the knowledge component or the idea components, but actually start working with them to help them improve their delivery of their business, right? Improve their client experiences, improve their ability to manage people better, and as a result, be more profitable as a business. So for me, that was the driver for this entire journey, Shiny. So that's the reason why I started this, and it has been a fabulous 3 years. We still continue to do that. So I'm very excited about it right now.
Nice, Amir. So what's a daily ritual or mindset shift that changed your leadership journey?
I always reflect back to this, my previous experience once again, right, Shani? Because one of the things in a corporate journey essentially is about the fact that you go to office, there's a structure, right? You go to office, there's certain things to do, there is a certain place to sit, there is all of that is defined, right? As an entrepreneur, you start off and that structure is completely lacking, right? And so this was an interesting first 3 months for me to figure out what that structure should be. And as a person, I generally am a very creative person. I enjoy music, I like writing, and I really enjoy all the creative sides. As a result, one of the things that the organization structure gave me a structure to operate on a daily basis. As I came out, I missed that structure, right? And for me, I went on a little bit of a creative sprint, right? But then one of the things happened was that I realized that I was running off on a tangent without actually bringing that structure into my work daily. So a couple of things started. One was a very interesting, I joined, as soon as I came out, or slightly before that, I actually kind of realized this space where I'm slightly weak on the structure bit. I actually joined an organization, which was a networking organization, right? And its name is BNI. So I joined in there, and one of the fundamental things that happened was that they gave me a lot of that structure, right? To come in on a Thursday morning, sit with people, sit with entrepreneurs, understand what they do, pitch your business on a regular basis. So I think that was a fantastic, fabulous journey which gave me that structure component. So over that period of time, that discipline has crept in, and I have now built my own systems in place, right? For example, I do journaling every morning, right? I try to write my goals every morning. I rewrite them every morning. Of course, some things changes, looking at different ways to achieve it, all that changes on a regular basis, but I know I'm going after a particular goal. I know I'm very passionate about this, but if I can combine the passion, the creativity, and the energy, along with the structured systems in place, then it's definitely something that we can deliver output. So I think that's really changed the mindset over the last, definitely over the last 1.5 years.
To you.
Thank you. Thanks so
Yeah,
much.
so if you had to define the problem a Manstra solves in one line, what would that be?
I read this sometime back, Shani. I think one of the fundamental things I had realized was most organizations go through, I know you asked one line, it's very difficult for me to say, I like to speak. But what I've realized is that major organizations, right, go through something called friction, right? And I had read this in a McKinsey report somewhere. So every organization creates its own set of frictions. There are, as an entrepreneur, you want something to happen, but it does not happen because you've set a process, that process does not really work, right? So as a result, you create internal frictions in the system, right? And the goal of what I do as an organization is to go in, find those friction points and remove those friction points if that friction is not required, right? So that removing internal frictions or invisible friction points within the organization is what I do. And that could be as simple as a manager not really acknowledging the employees well, right? And it creates, unconsciously, it creates a friction point when you don't get the best out of your team members, right? So I think that's the thing that we look for. We go in, we try and understand what's the frictions. Is there a process friction? Is there a people friction? Is there a technology friction? And I know a lot of people talk about this, right? From a technology point of view, there's a lot of challenge in adoption. We always talk about this in large organizations, small organizations. There's frictions created within the system, and how can we figure out to remove it? So one line, sorry for the long answer to your question, is remove invisible frictions within an organization.
Sure, the third eye definitely gives a
Absolutely
better perspective to understand these things.
Absolutely. So when we come in from outside, we see a lot of things that the owners themselves probably are not able to see. Not because they're not intelligent or smart people, but it's simply because when you are in that system for a long time, you become accustomed to it, you become used to it. And we call this, in the Lean Six Sigma world, we call this Gemba, right? So I'm a very, very big proponent, fan of Gemba, and I got this thing taught in my hotel days when I used to work in Taj. And it was a very interesting one, so I'm going to expand on that a little bit, right? So when I was working in Taj, for the first time I'd gone into Taj Bengal as an intern. And so I'd worked previously in the Indian kitchen, and then I'd worked in the coffee shop kitchen, and then finally I'd got a chance to work in the Pan-Asian kitchen there, right? So the first day I walked into that kitchen, normally what happens in an Indian kitchen is that once you go in, the first job you get is to slice onions.
Okay.
Right? So they give you a large sack of onions and says start chopping, right? You want to make, that's what the first thing is. But as I walked into this kitchen into the Pan-Asian kitchen with this Japanese chef, and I did not realize that. See, 3 of us joined in that day. So he called all 3 of us and said, come. Whoa. So he asked the name, etc. And then he said, okay, I want you guys to stand here, here, and there, right? And I want you to observe. All right, so we went in there, stood in this thing. 5 minutes, we looked around, and then we put our hand up, said, chef, done, we know what is happening. She said, okay, come, tell me what's happening. We all told him that guy is cutting carrots and making juliennes of carrots, and this guy is doing this, this guy is doing this. Then he looked at me and asked, what is that size of that julienne of carrot?
Okay.
No idea.
No idea.
No idea.
Yes,
He said, carrots, someone slicing it, cutting it. So he said, go back to your place, observe. And so he made us do this for the entire one day. And by the time we came out, we were extremely frustrated. All of our friends had gone into other kitchens. Some of them were actually starting to hold the vessel and start doing something. And we were standing there and looking at carrot cutting, right? And then he did that the next day. And he did that the third day. But I think what I started realizing on the third day was that I knew more about the kitchen and what was happening inside the kitchen, right, than any of my friends ever did. And so, entire of that 1 week, we never touched a single vessel. We didn't cook anything. We learned nothing in terms of the cooking, but I knew the size of every julienne, every size of every dice, of every single vegetable that was cut. And it was a fantastic journey when we came out, when we could answer some of those questions. So it had taught me something that had stayed with me long. And then I realized this power of it when I joined Dell, and there, the whole lean concept was taught to us.
Okay.
And then this whole Gemba concept was taught, because this is originating from Toyota, where they make managers actually, instead of starting to work, they start making them go and see the things. So when you see things, you start realizing the power of it. You understand why it is happening. What's the reason? So this is the one thing, right? That and I kind of lost the trace of this thing. But the component that I'm saying is that this is one of the most fundamental things that we go and do in any of the businesses that we work with, is to stand, observe, see what's happening, then make judgments.
Precision to detail.
Absolutely. Because a lot of people, I have noticed, come in and start looking at saying, hey, why are you doing it this way? You should start doing it this way. But you don't know why it has been designed that way. Unless you know, you cannot remove the fence. Right. So that's the journey that I've had, and this is what I really enjoy doing.
Amazing, Amir, amazing. Okay, why don't you share a transformation story where the odds were stacked, but the right approach changed everything?
Where the odds were stacked against, so I'll give you an example of a small hospital, right? It's an eye hospital. It's based in Chennai.
Okay.
And the owner of the hospital was really struggling, right? And he had, it's a third generation, and interesting from my point of view, when I interacted with him, he's a third generation doctor. So his grandfather had started it and his father had run it. And now he was almost at the verge where everything after COVID was in debt. He had multiple things set up, right, in different ways. The organization was honestly in almost a mess, right? And they were losing revenue on a day-to-day basis, right? But the service orientation of the doctor was extremely high because he came from a third-generation doctor. So they wanted to do the right things, but he did not know how to run the business, right? And this is something that I see with a lot of entrepreneurs, especially the entire of the medical field, is that they are very, very passionate about the service, but they don't have a strong understanding of how to run the business. So we went in with something called, so I always like this entire component of data-driven decision making, right? So I like to avoid the emotional attachment to things, and especially when it is, and see from a third-eye perspective. And so as I looked at this entire business, right, and we studied the data, one of the things that came out very obviously in a very short period of time was the fact that people were walking in to do cataract surgery, which was their biggest source of revenue, the top 80% of the revenue. Once they looked at that cataract and they did the cataract surgery, the patient never came back for the other eye. So they did the cataract surgery for one eye, they could see, and once they started seeing, they didn't want to come back for the surgery for the other eye, which is also very important. And so there was no counseling, there was no telling the client or the patient, what is the impact and why they should do this entire, both the eyes, finish the entire process. And as a result, almost 50%, 40% of the revenue was just leaking. I mean, they were not just getting it. So what we did was very simple. We actually set up a very simple process. We got a person, a counselor, to come in. We set up a callback mechanism to the patient. And with simple changes, right, with simple data changes, that actually it went up by about 110% of their overall revenue from what they were doing. And this is obvious because you're missing 50% of your revenue streams coming in, right? So that has been a good journey where I think we made an impact on a hospital that was small in scale, but we were able to change them with our ability to drive data-driven decision making for this organization, right? So that was, and they were in a very bad state. From there, I think they started growing, and they're now talking about how do we make it into multi-branch and things like that.
That's wonderful. Amit, please talk about Perform IQ.
So Perform IQ is a very sharp AI-driven analytical platform that we have created specifically for the hospitals and the healthcare industry. What it does is, in a single line, is take largely three different life cycles of a hospital, which impacts EBITDA, and then it looks at a past historical information and data, does the analysis around that component. Then essentially it does a predictive component, which tells you what's the future going to look like. And a third element of that is to give a prescriptive output so that the hospitals can make better decisions and help improve the EBITDA. So it's a very connected, it's a very sharp intelligence tool that focuses on improving the EBITDA of the hospital. Okay. That's the purpose of Perform IQ as a tool.
Sounds very powerful. So can you give a before and after snapshot of a hospital using Perform IQ?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Shani, for that question. Right. So let's take a look at one of the large hospital chains that we were working with. And one of the fundamental things with that hospital was it's about 250 bedded hospital, and it's a prime hospital which has been in the center of the city for a long time. And so one of the things that went in the hospital was the fact that they were not able to generate the kind of client experience. They were not able to generate the kind of rapid attrition that was happening within their entire nursing community was bleeding them in terms of the kind of quality of service that they were providing. And it's a predominantly a pediatric hospital chain across India. So, if you lose your people too fast, then your services go down, the quality of services go down. And the third element was that they were looking at, while they were growing in number in terms of they were doing a lot of branding and things to bring people in, they had some of the best doctors in the hospital. The fundamental fact about the fact that they were not actually growing their EBITDA, right? And so when we went into this entire organizations to understand what's going wrong, and we looked at 3 different life cycles, right? So we looked at the life cycle of the entire consumables. right? We looked at the entire life cycle of revenue, right? And we looked at the life cycle of the entire resource management. So we studied them separately. And when I studied them separately, we started looking at, okay, what are the processes on the ground? But more importantly, what was data telling us, right? Now, the key thing is to kind of look at it from 2-3 different aspects, right? One is that when you look at historical data for a consumable, every consumable has a component of, you have your inventory, you have your consumable items, and you've got what is in your stock, right? Now, if you are running a 100 crore business, right? If you're running 100 crores worth of inventory, the more you carry, the lesser is your EBITDA, right? Because you're holding that amount, right? You're holding that entire locked in money. So what we did is to kind of look at that historical information and the data to kind of start predicting what is the requirement of a particular medicine type. Now, historically, this would have been a very difficult thing to do because a hospital has 10,000 plus SKUs. Now, if you have 10,000 plus SKUs, it's very difficult for you to predict what is Livogen consumption going to be in September, what is Dolo consumption is going to be in July. It's very difficult to do.
True.
Now, what we have done is with the ability with an AI and statistical modeling capabilities and machine learning capabilities, what we have done is we've created a model which Perform IQ really does is to take that entire 10,000 odd SKUs and then start predicting using time series analysis. That's one element. Once it does a time series analysis, it then starts looking at what are the other parameters that we can regress it with, right? So I would think about it this way. If I have high inpatient and it's a children's hospital, the likelihood of giving Dolo would go up,
True.
right? If my inpatient is low, it would go down. Now, I can do this for inpatient as a parameter and can factor it in. How many outpatient footfall I have, I could factor it in. I could factor in other parameters into this entire equation, which Perform IQ does, and then build in for example, things like unbilled items, right? So you have to use phenyl, whatever, right? You have to use certain things to clean. Now that's got no bearing on, or very little bearing on the number of people coming to the hospital, because you have to clean. Even if 0 people come into the hospital, you still have to clean, right? So all of these factors starts factoring into this entire model that we built out, right? And then we did 2 things. One is to build out a statistical model using statistical techniques. Second was to kind of in parallel run AI-driven models. And so the reason why we did this is so that we always have a baseline with a statistical model and look at the AI models in conjunction with the statistical models and not just rely on the AI models. But essentially what this helped us to do was to kind of factor that in and bring that 100 crores down by about 5% points. That's a lot of money that you can quickly improvise, right? So this is just one dimension of this particular entire thing that we're talking about. I'll give you another example just to kind of expand this, right? Let's take, I've given you the consumable life cycle. Let me kind of expand on the more of the revenue life cycle, what happens, right? Now let's say you've got doctors, right? You got, let's say, 15 doctors. And when you have doctors and you look at their prescriptions, right? Now, some doctors are prescribing a certain medicine, and then the patients don't turn up and buy those medicines, or they don't come back for the procedure, right? Now, if you baseline this across all your doctors, you start seeing a pattern. Some doctors happening more, some doctors happening less.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. Now you got a problem, because what's happening with those doctors, why they are prescribing certain medicine and why are people not buying it from the pharmacy, or why they are not coming back for the procedure in the hospital, right? Yeah. And as we so this is the power of analytics and this is the power of predictive capabilities, right? We are seeing patterns now. So we start peeling, like the peelings of the layer of onion, right? We start, okay, why, how long, when this is going back to, what's the behavioral pattern? And this allows the chief operating officers or the CFOs to go and have real conversation with these doctors to see, is this arrangement that a doctor in the hospital is having, right? Yeah. Is this actually beneficial for the hospital? Yeah. So I think that's the kind of capability and things that we are trying to build in, whether it is revenue leakages are concerned. We've seen hospitals where there's a lot of leakage that's happening because discounts are given. Who's giving this discount? When are they giving this discount? And if you look at the current model of what's happening today, right? With all of those hospital information systems, etc., they give you information of past. They don't predict. And when they give you that information, by the time you are able to pull that information, link it with your consumable information that is coming from an ERP or some other system, it's already a month or 1.5 months late. So what Perform IQ is able to do in this particular case, it's just like it's like an analytical layer, right? Basically, it sucks in the ingest data from different applications, be it an ERP, be it an HRMS, be it a hospital information system, and then aggregate it together, triage information like this: which doctor, which patient, how much medicine, which procedure, right? So you're able to triage. And then because you're able to triage and you got historical information, you can predict forward. So this doctor is likely to give you this amount of business in September.
Okay.
Right? So I think that's the power of this entire capability that we are trying to build it. And this allows decision making at a CXO, CFO, whatever, right? The CEO level. And we've seen this massive success of some of these particular things in a couple of hospitals that we've worked with, where we've deployed this. And this has now been deployed across about 15, 16 hospitals in a particular chain across all their units. So they are now tracking this across.
Okay, nice. How would you ensure the data feeding into Perform IQ isn't flawed or manipulated?
Thank you so much for the question. But it's a very unique. It's not a unique. It's essentially one of those things that are actually becoming quite prevalent, right? We call it data poisoning, right? So if we had information from, we had people pumping in wrong set of data, you're likely to get very poor predictive capabilities, right? Predictive outcomes. And if you make decisions based on those outcomes, then you are making wrong decisions, right? So a couple of things that we have done in this entire model. So when we start this work, we actually take the right data, we are working with them, we're directly engaged. So once that process is through, we expect we ingest the data, right, on a regular basis. So if someone were to supply it with wrong set of information, a wrong data set, we don't directly take that data and put it in our engine. So the way it works is there is an ingestion layer, right, where we suck in the data. The second layer is basically where we run the entire analytics. It's an engine there. And the third is basically the visualization or the ability to review it, see it, and that's what we interact with, right? So in this ingestion, we have a sandbox model. So the data does not come in directly into the system. It does not come in directly to our databases. It sandboxes it, and we start pulling the analysis out there to see if there's too much of variation in that data set from what we already have. If it has, then it throws the flag out to us saying that, hey, you know what, the errors that we're seeing are too great. So let us know if there's a change in the environment, which is why. For example, if there's a change in environment like a COVID situation, then yes, the data will change. But if there is none, then why is this data changing so fast and so much? So that's one way of protecting it. Yeah, that's a heads up. There's something going on. The data is not talking the right thing. And then, of course, then we kind of track all of the statistical models, etc. We then track to see if there's too much of error rates, and things like that. So we use statistical parameters to track that. So that's one way to prevent just someone dumping in wrong set of information and our prediction analysis going wrong. Of course, there are many other layers of checks in this entire model. So I'm just giving you the high level, but there are multiple layers of checks before it actually runs into the engine and then it throws out the component.
Definitely. All right. So if you walk into a hospital today, what would you start looking for a hidden performance gaps?
I think a hospital, right, and I'm just focusing around profitability of hospitals or EBITDA of a hospital, right? Because if you walk into a hospital, you'll see many things, right, that you can see. And I did talk to you about my Gemba walk. So when I walked into a particular hospital, and this was an experience, the chief operating officer was talking to us about, Amir, we want to improve the client service, we want to improve this as a children's hospital there. And so as he walked in and we sat down in that sofas out there just to watch what's happening. This is not what I do, but as a person, I kind of quickly notice these things. So when a mother walks in, she's carrying a small baby in her arm, and there's another kid in her hand, and there's this heavy door, right? And she's not able to open the door, right? So she's struggling and she's trying to open, she's turning around, pushing it, all of that thing. Now, I come from a hospitality industry, right? You walk into any 5-star hotel, You have a person who will open it, or you will have, when you go to an IT place, you have a door which does the slide open, close, right, in an airport or wherever. So it's not that complicated to solve for it. One is to say that I want to drive customer experience, but what are you really doing? So when I look at a hospital, I see a lot of opportunities like this. But we have very purposefully focused on a problem that has three elements, right? Number one is this a problem that we are solving for is a genuine problem, right? And I think EBITDA is a genuine problem, especially when it comes down to especially small, hospitals and into-point clinics, because a lot of them are shutting shop. They're not able to sustain. So we've taken EBITDA as a particular problem statement that we want to solve for, right? B, does the client want to solve this problem, right? Is this a pain point for them, right? That's the second component I always look for. Do they want to solve them? There are many problems. I mean, and as a leaders, you have got that much of bandwidth and energy to solve 1, 2, 3 things. So do they want to solve the problem? And the third is, yes, both of us want to solve the problem, and there is a problem. Will you pay me for it? Right? So the platform that we have designed ticks off all the three boxes.
Okay.
Right? Because if I want to serve and there's a problem, you also want to, but you will not pay me, then the business does not run. Right? Okay. So Perform IQ is very designed to kind of solve a particular problem which the hospitals want to solve. We believe we have the capability to solve, and the clients are willing to pay for it because it helps them to run their hospitals better. And in my experience, if a hospital is profitable, then they really invest into patient care, they invest into new equipments, they invest in better doctors, they don't cut the salary of the nurses and do all of those good things that actually helps the care to be provided to the patients are far better.
Right, that's very true. So Amir, why do so many digital transformation projects fail in healthcare even when tech is good?
So it's a broad statement, right? So I definitely don't think a lot of them are failing. There are a lot of them are succeeding. So I think the way I look at the entire digital transformation space that's happening in the healthcare space, it's a large, vast area, right? And so there's a lot of technology that is coming into play, right? And a lot of them are really doing very well, and some of them are struggling with it. Now, one element that if you think about it is that every hospital, and when I talk about healthcare, I'm just now narrowing it down to a hospital space, right? First, I think when I look at a hospital, there are 2-3 core groups of people who really are making decisions about it. One is the medical director group of people, which is basically composed of doctors, etc., who are professionally and who are medically far more focused. Then the second group essentially is the set of people who are basically running the administration of the hospital, right? So you look at your CFOs, the chief operating officers, and that set of people. And the third element is essentially your owners or people who are funding it, etc., right? So that's a different group of people, and their expectations are different. Now, if you take any digital transformation, you've got to really look at and how to make sure that all these three groups are aligned, right? Now, if you just focus on just a medical component, which people are doing, and there is a need for us, and so I'm also working as the chief operating officer of another couple of organizations, smaller organizations, which are also making, designing technology to support some of these areas, right? But if I look at it, what I've learned it is that there is always a little bit of the power dynamics between all of these groups of people, right? Some want it, some don't want it, and that is always there in any large organization or any mid-sized organization. That dynamics will always be there. So what we realized is that instead of going down the path of health tech, which a lot of people are doing, we decided to take a health fintech. So we kind of narrowed it further down. Right? And said, okay, let's take a hospital and say, how do we improve the financial health of that organization using technology? So in this, when we did this entire journey, we took an element of, we're not getting down into medical practices, right? We don't want to tell them how to run because they are doctors, they have vast experience. There's a lot of clinical requirements, all of that. We didn't want to get into that kind of a challenge, right? The second element was we wanted something that will actually aid them, because if you can save certain amount of money, it will always go into better structure, better improvement of their hospital capability in delivering better quality service, right? when you think about it from the second group of people, right, the CFOs, the CXOs, essentially we are working with that group of people to try and give them the ability to make better decisions in terms of managing their revenue, managing their profitability, managing their inventory, right, so that the services are better given. And this also helps to bring the third group in, which is the investors, which is the owners. Essentially, they want to see that they are getting faster return. So we avoided this through this entire model of Platform IQ. We're trying to make sure that all the three groups or subgroups are aligned within the organization. And as a result of this, we are able to better and quickly deliver outcomes to the hospital without going through the resistance. Now, I've tried a different few other things, and where we run into is that the difference between the medical groups, right, versus the finance groups, because if we do too much of the medical focused work and bring in tech, then there is a less buy-in from the CFO, because every time you go in there, there's an ask, okay, why, where is the result coming? Can you show us the result? Can you show us the result? And if you go too much on the side of the CFO group, saying that, okay, this will give you a lot of benefit, then is it ethically right for the patient, right? Yeah. So you get into this conflict. So what we tried doing was, and we spend a lot of time, the reason I'm expanding on this is because we spend a lot of time really trying to identify a problem statement that we can get buy-in for. And we can actually execute quickly, fast, in about a year for multiple hospitals. So that has been the journey, and that's the way I see it. So I don't agree necessarily that all digital transformations fail, but there's another element to this, of course, which is the change management element, right? A lot of times, some of us actually just take in technology which looks shiny, it is great, it is great on paper, and this is also a cause of the problem. What we are trying to solve is because they look at a technology and said, hey, we should bring it in. Now you've brought it in. Now this technology does not talk to the rest of the technology, right? So you've got an ERP which this technology doesn't talk to, and this is what has happened in the hospitals. You've got a hospital management system that does not talk to ERP. You've got an ERP which does not talk to your HRMS. It does not talk to your medical records. So as a result, you've got disparate systems, right? Spread across, and you don't get the insight you want, right? And that is exactly what Platform IQ is trying to solve for. So the change elements. So three things. One is that we need to really think through the digital transformation journey when CTOs and the CEOs actually sit through it, CEOs sit through it, understand the digital transformation journey, map that out, and then bring in the right kind of technology like Platform IQ to kind of see, without changing your base infrastructure, how can you get benefit out of it. Right? So that's the way I see more of the successes happening, rather than trying to change the core systems, which are highly unlikely, because a hospital has been using that for the 5 or 7 years. It's very difficult to move away from that.
Yeah. True. Okay, so what's the future of hospital performance management, and where does Perform IQ fit in?
So I think the game is changing, especially with AI, and I've not touched upon the AI concept till now, but I think with the game is changing drastically, right? The historical way of looking at, I look at a dashboard, then I do filter, and I try to find, that game is changing very quickly. So I don't think people will in the future start looking at that kind of dynamics. With large language models coming in, you can ask questions and it give you a response, right? So we've tried to take that AI capability, agentic AI capabilities, and build it into our Perform IQ systems. And I think that's where it will eventually go, not just with Perform IQ, but with all systems, is that you're not going to go back and do the filter and try to find, right? Alternatively, when you don't find it, you extract the data dump, you put an analyst. Now the data analyst goes and does some work, cleaning it up, doing some graphs, pivots, and then putting it on a PPT so you can present. I think that is also going to really change. What's really going to come in is the ability for people to really ask questions and start getting real-time answers. Okay, what's the pattern showing up? How has it happened? So I think the roles are going to become far more focused around what happened yesterday. What I want near real-time ability to make decisions, right? And where decisions can be created through an AI, I would want to move in. For example, if I want to order a particular line item, Livogen for matter, and I need 100 of them in the next month, the agentic AI will simply be able to raise the purchase order, which is what we are also doing, and send you probably a mail just for you to approve, or even call you to say that your order is pending, this thing is pending on your box, so that you need to just approve it. Can I take the approval and I move forward, right? To that extent, you can leverage AI to drive these responses. So when you think about it from a platform perspective, there are two pieces. One is the fast response, right? I need quickly, as of yesterday, what has happened, I need to know. Then I need to know the second component, which is essentially all about patterns, right? Which is, tell me the pattern of how is this hospital performing versus other hospitals in the same location. How is my hospital overall performing with all my hospitals other in other cities, right? And I'll give you, this is where we're starting to see this pattern starts emerging, because when you start comparing one hospital with another hospital, then you start seeing the benchmark of, hey, what's going well in that hospital? What's not here? So ability to interact with the data on a real-time basis, get insights and information that are very quick for you, and you need to know that, because you can't have a conversation like this happened 1 month back, right?
Yeah.
See, predictive capability, what's the likelihood of risks that are happening in the hospital, right? Think about it. We do, and I have done this work within my past work, right, with my large financial organizations, is to predict risk. What's likely to happen, right? Now, that's the same models can be applied, taking from a financial world into a hospital world. What's the likelihood of a fall in the hospital? Right? Yeah. Think about it. If it's a small babies, right? You are having nurses who are doing overtime. It just increases the risk of a baby's fall. You can predict it with various parameters. You can actually risk predict it. You can run your FMEAs, and you can actually know what are my high risk opportunities, and you can stop it. So I think that's the kind of nature of work that's going to go and come into the next bit of it, from data, predictions, all of that for hospitals. And I know I'm giving the hospitals as an example, but I think in the total healthcare industry, this is something that'll expand into.
Yeah, very nice, Amir. So now coming back to you, how do creativity and structure coexist in your work across consulting, writing, and music?
So like I said in the beginning of the interview, right, I'm a very creative person. For me, that's what I really enjoy. If I can create every single day, I just love it, right? But I also know to run a business, you need to bring in systems, right? And you need to bring in structures. So I kind of force those structures for myself. So I have a very specific thing. For me, when I look at this platform that I was building, it is a creative model, right? So when I try to create music, right? For me, my brain is working to be creative, how to do something different, how to put different compositions together, right, to see how it can work, right? How can I bring in different ragas together to see how can I bring in different set of music? How can I mix drums with something else, right, and see what's the kind of, and most of the time it's not that great, right, but at least it gives you the ability to understand and do the dynamics, right, and build it in. So that's the enjoyable part that I really like. I also like to write because it gives you the creative freedom to do things. All of this basically translates into the work, right? Because I have that ability to do that, it then translates into, I start looking for patterns, because pattern finding is nothing but creativity, right? So for me, the biggest thing about the entire thing that I'm building is about finding patterns that normally people are not being able to see. So I think I bring that element to it, but I then have, obviously, over now I have got a team to work with, and the team helps me to structure myself. There are times in the day I kind of keep the systems in place where I kind of make sure that I do the certain things so that we are able to progress steadily towards it. So I try to balance, but if you'd ask me if I just had to do that, I would probably just do that. But I enjoy trying to balance today both. Yeah.
That's very nice. So any advice you would like to give to founders or leaders who feel stuck right now?
Yeah, so long back I was doing this NLP course, right? And I did this out of curiosity learning, so I was learning how to do coaching. One of the fundamental things about the word stuck, right, comes from a physical feel that you're stuck, right? So when we use the word stuck, which means that somewhere we feel that we are not able to move, right? When you're physically not able to move, you're mentally also. So the physical, mental, spiritual, all of these are dimensions that are connected with each other, right? So when someone uses the word stuck and they're not able to move, the best way is to get unstuck is to move, just physically move, right? So when leaders talk to me about this, so sometimes what they're meaning to say is that they're not able to think creatively, they're not able to come back with solutions, they're not. So the best way is to kind of get out of your comfort zone, move physically out, right? Go out to a networkers meeting, go meet, interact people, right? So physically you change the location, you go out and understand what's going on. What are other people trying to do to solve a similar problem or different problems? So this is what will then start the mental stimulation to find a way to solve that particular problem, right? Of course, I can give different solutions, but we don't know what the problems are. So if the problem is that you are not able to solve a particular challenge, I definitely look at what is the physical aspect of moving, but I think fundamentally I advise people to do something in Lean. We used to call it A3. It's a sheet of paper. It's an A3 sheet of paper,
Okay.
right? So what you do is you write the challenge that you're facing, right? Just write it down. Put it physically. There is an element of writing that physically down. Once you do that, then you start elaborating that into saying, hey, what's the real problem? Where is the problem really existing, right? So the problem is, let's say so recently I'll give you an example. I went to a small restaurant business, right? So they are into sweets and savories, and they're stuck. So they started this 9 months back. Every month they sell about 3 lakhs. And their rent, everything else costs to 4.5 lakhs. Every month they're losing 1.5 lakhs. And for the last 9 months, they've not been able to figure it out. So they spoke to me. They said, okay, Amir, come and help, right? Can you look at this? So as I was doing it, and very similar, she said, Amir, we are stuck. Right? We're not able to do anything. We're just going and we're hoping that this Diwali is good and we will get some this thing. But hope is not a great option, right? So then I made them sit and do this. What is the actual problem? Where are you, right? So, when they started writing that problem statement, then they're starting to look at all the data points. Okay, what dishes I'm selling? I've got 50, 60 variety of dishes, sweets out there, right? What is really selling? Who's buying? What is not getting sold? You've not really looked at any of those data points, right? When do the footfalls happen? Who are your regular clients? Which customers are not coming back to you? Why are they not coming back, right? Then you start looking at countermeasures, right? Okay. Then you start looking at, okay, now I know what to do, right? I know my rasagullas are not selling, right? And I'm making 50 of them or whatever, 100 of them. Why? If I just want to keep variety, I know that I will only sell 10 pieces, just make 10 and sell the things that are actually moving. So these are things that, people are not able to think because they feel stuck in that same space, right? So if you can look around and then start using the data, use the A3 to start solving for problems, I think that's the best way, right? To kind of get to a place where you know what to do. Otherwise, of course, you can always contact me, so I'm there to help.
So Amir, it was lovely conversing with you, and all the best for you and Amanstra. You guys are doing a wonderful job.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Shani. Thank you so much, Mia.